Let's get right into it. Andrew Bahlmann, CEO of Intelstrat Consulting and founder of Corpreneur, joining us. He says having worked in both corporate and entrepreneurial business, he realized there were incredibly powerful benefits that could be experienced through harnessing the best of breed characteristics and skills from both environments. He's here to explain what Corpreneur is all about. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome onto the talk show.
Evening, Mr. Chaba. Thanks very much.
Corpreneur, it seems to be the buzzword at the moment internationally. What exactly does it mean?
Really what it represents is an individual who has the ability to combine the best of breed operating characteristics, if you like, from both a corporate environment as well as an entrepreneurial. Looking at how business has evolved, particularly over the last 12 to 24 months, there's always been a very definite line between an entrepreneurial environment as well as the corporate, and I think that line has become particularly greyed. So that's really where the concept emanated from, and it's going from strength to strength.
And when someone is said to be a corpreneur, what exactly are the skills or what exactly are the characteristics that they embody that all, not only corpreneurs, but entrepreneurs and those in the corporate world should strive for?
I think it's always going to be a combination. You know, I think if one looks at an entrepreneur, it's really, there's a set embedded characteristics, if you like, in their DNA. That sense of urgency, there is no tomorrow. Everything they do is representative of them as an individual. That fire, that hunger, that there's no option for failure, as well as risk taking. Sometimes it needs to be a calculated risk, but there's really that element. And then obviously if you cross over to the more corporatized environments, ironically, a lot of them started in that space, but they lost it over time. And I think really it's how do you embed that entrepreneurial DNA back into those corporate environments to re-energize? You know, a lot of the guys are taking a lot of strain in the current economic conditions, some of it around survival, but it's kind of how do you break those shackles, reboost some energy and things into their DNA so they can hopefully start flourishing and innovating again, because I think some of that momentum gets lost along the way when one's in a situation of just surviving.
I want to talk about the differences as well between an entrepreneur and someone in the corporate world,
Sure.
the security that one has in the corporate world and the uncertainty, the hunger and drive that an entrepreneur has, that someone in the corporate world really doesn't need, and simply because things are much easier. You're dealing with a run-on brand,
Sure.
and there are various contrasts between people who are entrepreneurs and those who are in the corporate world. And we're going to talk about how we marry those contrasts to actually or at least bring to life a corpreneur. I think it's very, very interesting. It's a concept that Andrew Bahlmann is the founder of. He is CEO of Intelstrat Consulting, and a corpreneur is someone who runs a multinational business with all the drive and ambition of an entrepreneur. And we are taking your calls. If you want clarification, if you've come across something like this before, and you really want to get some kind of detail from Andrew Bahlmann, our guest in the studio, 0891 104 207, 0891 104 207, or SMS 34701. SMS number is 34701, and SMSs are charged at R2. At Kendra,
The Talk Shop.
This is the Talk Shop with me, Master Chaba Mushweshwe, on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader, and we are talking about a corpreneur with Andrew Bahlmann, CEO of Intelstrat Consulting and founder of Corpreneur. He says that Corpreneur takes entrepreneurial energy and urgency back into those corporate environments. Now, I wanted to talk about the differences between the corporate environment and the entrepreneurial sector or environment, so to speak. When we look at entrepreneurs, they take risks, yes, but their necks are on the line, whereas if someone in the corporate world takes a risk, the company can absorb that risk and life will go on.
Sure.
So how then do we talk about taking risks in such a safe environment?
I think when one looks at the corporate environment, I think it's changed particularly over the last 3 to 4 years, probably. I think the days of joining a business and staying in that business for 30 years until retirement and getting the gold watch have gone. I think the face of corporates, the global corporate environment has changed significantly, and I don't think that safety net, if you like, exists the way it used to a few years ago. I think the having been in a corporate environment myself and some large corporates, one loses a lot of the real impact that can be felt on the bottom line, the impact individuals make because of inefficiencies. And in these environments, and I always say in a tough trading environment, it's probably the best environment to get your business structure and model right. Because if you can survive that, as soon as the economy turns, you've got a great foundation to leverage. And I think more and more companies are looking inwardly to say, if revenues are driving up because the consumer has had to tighten their belt, or the markets have downturned in certain areas, where else can they look? The traditional place to go is costs, but costs unfortunately sometimes equate to people, and I think that's where a lot of it gets lost along the way. And the approach that I'm taking with my clients is, South Africa is a very unique environment from a business perspective. And on one side of it, we've got massive unemployment, and the other side, a massive skills shortage. And I think the reality is we don't have the luxury of coming in from myself as an outsider, stepping into a business, and I can give you a lot of theory and we can cut X, Y, and Z and everything will be great. We don't have that anymore. We have to work with what we have. And I think really what's a massive concept that I push through Corpreneur and the Corpreneur approach to business is you get it down to its DNA. And the DNA of a business is its people. And if you break that down, so I think the strive and what we're achieving with our existing customers is re-embedding that sense of urgency and changing the attitude to say, even though I'm sitting in a business, at the end of the day, in many, many corporate environments, I have an employee number and I am a number. Things change, my job is gone. I don't have as much security as it existed in the past. And I think that's why the whole concept and that graying of the two areas is important. And I think sure, in an entrepreneurial environment, one takes massive risks and you put it all on the line. If you look at what is yourself in a job, in the current working and employment environment, it's all on the line. And I think from that perspective, one can draw similarities between the two. If I drop a ball, if I make the wrong decision, if I don't take a risk, if I don't grow, if I don't move forward, and my position becomes redundant, I'm out on the street. And there is no guarantee that there's a massive amount of employment out there that my safety blanket is effective.
But by the same token, that number, that employee number, has you thinking, I don't have ownership here. Even in terms of successes, I will not get direct credit from them. So there isn't that sense of this is my baby. This is something I started. This is something that I want to see succeed.
Sure. I think that the reality is, if you look at an individual, so if I look at myself, at the end of the day, I'm really a product. And I think that's where, what do I want to do with that product? If I want to sit behind a desk from 9 until 5 for the next 30 years, nothing and I don't have a mindset that I want to change, that's always going to be a challenge. I think no external model or framework or approach is going to drop something in the water and all of a sudden that's going to change. It always starts at the top though. It starts with leadership, and when we look at the clients that I've worked with this year, the progressive nature that those leaders have permeates down into the business. And I think the reality is these processes take time. And I think often a concept or an approach like Corpreneur is not going to fix a whole lot of underlying issues necessarily. But what it does do is, when you go down to, I call it the DNA, everything is exposed, warts and all. And then you start identifying if there's a lack of sense of ownership or feeling part of the business. You've got to fix that first. You actually can't now take some other framework and think that's going to be the answer to all of your problems. But what it does do, as I said earlier, it really exposes a business. And that's why I said it starts at the top. A lot of the time, your senior guys are the ones that have to take a long, hard look at their business, at their people, and what's right, and obviously what's wrong, and have an attitude that, we need to fix this.
Can Corpreneur apply to everyone? I mean, we hear that not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Yes, we'd love to see businesses flourishing and growing and people starting their own things in South Africa, but not everyone can be an entrepreneur. So if I'm in the corporate world, it means that I've recognized that particular limitation with regards to my particular DNA. Can I change that? Would Corpreneur still apply to me, who does not think entrepreneurially, who's very secure in the corporate world, in plodding up the corporate ladder and having parameters set?
Look, definitely, and I think that was a massive drive when I came up with the concept. When one looks at the the realities of the characteristics, and there's probably thousands of them, because I mean every entrepreneur is very, very different. The same way as if you go into the corporate environment, there's thousands of different characteristics there. And really what this process does, I'm a firm believer that anything can be developed. Sure, there's certain people who, when they were at school, they started a shop and made a whole lot of money and whatever it is. That's one degree of it. But I'm a firm believer, if you can bring one or two characteristics of entrepreneurship into your life or into your role, you've crossed that chasm, and it starts exacerbating from there. So, something simple as there is no tomorrow. So don't put something off for a day, do it today. It sounds simple, but it is so powerful. If you quantify that in a massive corporate environment, the impact on productivity and bottom line is going to be exponential. And so that's what this process does. It starts with something little, and you build and you build and you build. So my approach is, whether it's the receptionist at the front desk, all the way up the hierarchy, whatever that structure may be, there's definitely a positive influence that needs to take place, not only that can take place in many, many businesses in our country.
But how do you get the as you say, energy and urgency back into your shopfront workforce?
Sure.
Yes, your senior management will want to change things around, because they, at the end of the day, the buck stops with them. They're responsible.
Sure.
But when it comes to your general workforce, you've got people who are on the shop floor, you've got people who are in the front desks, people who really don't have a sense of, I can change things around, or my little contribution is not going to change the face of the whole organization. So how do you get that entrepreneurial energy and urgency back into those people?
I think, for me, that's where it starts and it ends. It's kind of a bottom-up approach, because you can do all the work you want with senior leadership. If you don't get down to the coalface, it's actually not going to work.
Absolutely.
And I think the power of, first of all, giving a forum, how can one contribute? What does it mean? And giving tangible results. And then from there, you create a belief. I can do this. In one of the big banks that I worked for, there was a intervention by a call center agent that probably redefined the customer service process, and probably has saved the bank hundreds of millions over the years. Citing those sort of things, the belief that I actually can do something. And we always think that if I'm going to come up with the next best great thing, or I'm going to change something fundamentally, it has to be, I'm going to change the strategic direction of this business. It's not. It's like a pond. You drop a little pebble in and it creates a little wave, but it's a wave. Then you move to the next. And I think the key thing here is, it does take time. One has to understand the individual dynamics of people. Everybody's got their own belief system. And, if there's no faith in the leadership of the business, like I said earlier, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think really what it does is our process, when I look at a business and go through everything, really looking at every single role, because technically every role should have a purpose. And that is that person's life. It's their livelihood, and sure, maybe it's in a corporate environment, but them and their families and everybody's responsible, or has a dependency on on those individuals. Break that down and then think, what can we do? And I think the key thing is what I said: start with one thing. If you can do one thing and people come up with it, and I think it becomes habitual. And, when we drop in some of our frameworks, a lot of people just look and say, oh, that's so bloody obvious. But that's life. A lot of times the greatest solutions are very, very simple. And then it's around creating the correct environments to allow those to flourish. And it just becomes often a flattening of hierarchy and a shift of power base, because at the end of the day, to your example, the guys at the coalface, they are the business, and I think the leadership has a massive responsibility to those people, but it's that power-based shift I believe is going to change significantly over the next few years.